Well, firstly, thank you, Cathaoirleach, for selecting this really important commencement matter in relation to planning. And at the outset, I want to welcome my colleague and friend and Minister from the Department, and good to see you, particularly Minister, with a strong record in terms of planning and environmental considerations, and a major champion of the Oireachtas Convention. So it's important that this commencement matter is dealt with in this way. I suppose I want to start by saying it's very timely that we're dealing with this item today, because in this morning's Irish Times by Colm Keena, the legal affairs correspondent, there's a very substantial piece in the Irish Times today, of which I've brought a copy, and I can give you a copy, Minister, later when we leave the chamber. And it suggests in the Irish Times article this morning that new proposals would see an individual having to pay up to £5,000 and a legal entity £10,000 towards a notice party costs when a notice of party successfully defends judicial review. And that is outrageous and a disgrace, and I would hope that that would not happen on the watch of the Green Party in government. I don't think it will. I'm confident enough in the Green Party to know that they will resist it, and I would again call here that that does not happen. And the fact that this has even got life, and the fact that this is even published in this morning's Irish Times, has to be of concern to environmentalists and has to be of concern to the Green Party. As I say, this is today's Irish Times in my office. I open it and I read that. So what I want to get back then is to the kernel of the commencement matter, Minister. And we know that the housing planning system is in crisis over judicial reviews. You know that, I know that, we all know it. But it isn't the objectors that are the cause of the problem. It is the fact that there are major concerns about the strategic housing development, of which there were submissions made in an interim report, all of them of which were ignored. What I do know I want to share with this House, having exhaustively engaged with Bord Pleanála and its documentation and correspondence that I have toed and froed with, and also knowledge I would have gleaned from my active involvement in the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Housing Planning and Local Government. And I state three things. Bord Pleanála has lost 90% of its completed judicial reviews lodged against its decisions regarding SHDs. Bord Pleanála has been the subject of 33 completed judicial reviews since the SHD fast-track process was launched in 2017. Bord Pleanála has lost 29 judicial reviews, with 14 they conceded themselves without a hearing, and 15 conceded following the full court hearings and judgments. That's the reality. That is the record of the House that I want to put on the record of this House. So there is a problem in the SHDs, and we need to address it. We have a concern about development, about industry, about jobs, about homes. I share that. So what I would say, Minister, it's a flawed process. It's a disgrace. It should never have been got through the programme for government, but you had to compromise. I engaged with the Green Party and they told me they had to compromise, and I recognise that. But let's see the end to the SHD process. Let's not take it out on environmentalists or citizens. Let's empower city and county councillors and citizens to engage in an SHD or any other planning application. And what the current strategic housing development plan process does, it excludes individuals from a third-party appeal in the local planning authority. It excludes environmentalist groups like Friends of the Earth, An Taisce and other people who have a view. It might not be the right view, but they have a view and there must be access. And I know, Minister, I'm talking to someone who's fiercely committed to all of this engagement. So let's have engagement. If we have to have reform, let's have it around the timelines, but let's not penalise or punish people for engaging, and also be mindful, as I say in this commencement matter, adhere to the Oireachtas, the principles of the Oireachtas Convention, of which the Green Party and you are committed. Thank you, Minister.
Minister Mága Cathaoirleach agus Seanad Éireann. I want to thank Senator Boyhan for raising this issue, and quite correctly, I think I share your concerns and interest in the Oireachtas Convention and public participation in general. And I just want to have an opportunity to update members on the reform of the judicial review provisions in the Planning and Development Act and the related matter of the proposed establishment of the Environmental and Planning Court, both of which are important commitments in the programme for government or shared future. The general scheme of the Housing and Planning Development Bill 2019, which was published in late 2019 and has since been subject to public consultation process, sets out an initial outline of the revisions of the judicial review provisions in section 50 to 50B of the Planning and Development Acts. The general scheme was incorporated into the government's legislation programme in autumn session 2020, amongst the list of general schemes to undergo pre-legislative scrutiny. However, given the range of other legislation proposed by my department for scrutiny by the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Housing, Local Government and Heritage in the earlier period of the current government, it was not possible to progress the general scheme as envisaged. Further to the programme for government commitment in relation to the reform of the judicial review provisions and having regard to the increasing number of judicial review challenges being taken against planning decisions, particularly in relation to large-scale housing developments such as the SHDs, which is undermining efforts to increase housing supply, combined with knock-on implications for project delivery, including strategic infrastructure developments under the National Development Plan required to meet the demands of a growing economy. The Government is now anxious that the legislative process on reforming the judicial review provisions can be activated and progressed as soon as possible. My department is presently engaging with the Joint Oireachtas Committee on the arrangements in this regard, and I would hope that the process can be facilitated at the earliest opportunity. However, I would like to assure the House that it is intended that the reforms of the judicial review provisions would be in line with our EU law obligations on public participation under the Aarhus Convention. With regard to the proposed new Environmental Planning Court, it is intended that this will be established as a division of the High Court, simultaneous with the coming into effect of judicial review reforms. My department has already been engaged with the Department of Justice in relation to the legislative and practical aspects associated with the establishment of the new court, which will require the resourcing of further dedicated judges upon establishment. And again, just to support Senator Boyhan in the points raised, public participation is a corner of our, and should be a cornerstone of our democracy. And certainly the Aarhus Convention, we would have been involved in cases to test the early provisions of it when it came into effect in Irish law. And I think it is critical that community groups, NGOs, have the right to participate fully in our planning and legislative and our judicial system when it comes to planning. So I do support that, and I think there is also a commitment within the programme for government to move away from token consultation towards a more participative and inclusive planning system, and I think that's something that we would all more than welcome.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Minister, for that response. And I say I'm happy that response, and it was just a coincidence, really, that today's Irish Times carried that story. I want to put on the record, however, that on the 15th of June 2001, this year, 2021, should I say, the Minister Peter Burke did write to the committee of which I'm a member, and he's pointed out the government programme or shared vision and his requirement to look again at the general scheme of the Housing and Planning and Development Bill 2019, Minister, which you referred to. And I'm fully supportive of his request. Indeed, I proposed that his request would be accepted by the committee, that we would do a PLS on it. And he did express the concern and hope that the committee would look at it. So I want to thank the Minister, particularly Minister Burke, because he's been proactive in that. And I think that's where we can do a lot of the lifting on this work. But I think let's not keep our eye off the ball. Let's not punish or disadvantage good environmental citizens who want to engage in our process. And again, I want to thank you for coming to the House, Minister, to deal with this commencement matter. Thank you.
Minister,
I just have been handed a copy here in relation to the article, and certainly, as I said, in the early stages of the Aarhus Convention being brought into effect in Irish law, I would have been one of a number of people who took a case around seeking a not prohibitively expensive order to protect us from legal costs, given that we were community activists at the time. And certainly I think it's really important that, as I said, that communities, individuals and environmental organisations have the right to take legal proceedings and not be unduly affected. And that is what Aarhus is about. It's about access to environmental justice and access in a way that's timely, and that access to environmental information. I think it's vitally important that we have a very fair and transparent judicial system and planning system. And I think, again, I thank Senator Boyhan for raising this important issue this morning.